What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with an insane video that is guaranteed to help you climb in League of Legends. You see, a lot of players, they will never gain a lead and they will slowly but surely lose a game, all the while never being able to pull ahead of the enemy. Or they will gain an early lead, but they will lose it later on in the game. So the GameLeap team has compiled 5 amazing tips to guaranteed help you gain a lead and maintain one and dominate your ranked games. But of course, the GameLeap website is the #1 place to see these step-by-step with challenger level VOD reviews and advanced tips, everything you need to climb so quickly. We've helped tens of thousands of people easily climb all the way to the high tiers of play. So do yourself a favor and go check it out in the links down below. But let's just jump right into it. Now, moving on to the first tip that we have for you, it's planning out every one of your recalls. You see, planning out recalls is absolutely key if you want to not only get a lead, but maintain one throughout the game. If you don't do this, you absolutely have to, and it could be the thing that is holding you back. Now, if you might be a little bit confused by this, think about it for a bit and tell me what happens when you just sit in your lane for the first 10 minutes of a game without recalling. There are only a few possible things that could happen. 1, you die while sitting on thousands of gold because the enemy is super juiced up 10 times stronger than you, spending all the money they have. The next thing that could happen is that you're getting pushed around like the new kid in school in your lane because the enemy has like a BF sword and your Doran's blade just is not cutting it. Now finally, and this is definitely the worst possible scenario, you're getting away with it and it's actually not punishing you, but it's making you a worse player because you don't realize just how big of a mistake this is. You see, if you properly manage your recalls, you manage them at the appropriate times and you plan them out ahead of time, you could set yourself up in a way where you use your recalls appropriately to upgrade your gear, then you go back in and you snowball it even further and further because you're gonna be stronger, you're gonna be able to get more work done, and then you're gonna be able to gain exponentially more money. Now, the big takeaway for you is that if you're sitting in a lane with 1,000 gold and you just killed your opponent, you are absolutely wasting your time. If you don't spend your gold, you are throwing your lead. So next time you get an early kill, what you want to do is shove the wave to the enemy's tower so they lose all the gold and XP from it and then recall immediately. You see, in general, you don't want to be too greedy for plates before the 10-minute mark, as you don't have enough damage to make it worth it. So make sure after these factors, these check boxes get checked in your mind, you instantly recall, you upgrade all your equipment, and then you're good to go from there. Now moving on to the next thing that we got to talk about, and this is freezing the lane. And freezing is a very powerful tool because your enemies will often be overextending while you get to sit back and take farm for free. Now, in the early stages where you might just be even with an enemy, you can freeze for multiple waves and it can single-handedly turn the game into your favor. You will be constantly forcing them to play risky, denying them gold, and maybe even tilt them. That can be the worst possible thing. Now, this can be difficult depending on your matchup, but if you do not have any form of sustain, it can be incredibly easy. And we have other videos that cover exactly how to handle wave management. So do yourself a favor and go check those out if you don't understand. Or, of course, the GameLeap website has tons of these. So if you want to know more, definitely go check it out there. Now, the big question that's going to come up to all of your minds is, if freezing is just so good, then why shouldn't you just do it all the time? And the problem is, yes, it can be good, but the problem with freezing is that it will take all of your attention. If you don't manage it properly, it can get absolutely out of control and unfreeze, which is just going to be a disaster. This means that you can't move to help your team with important objectives like Rift Herald, Dragon Baron, or maybe even just defending another tower. You need to be really prepared to move around the map if you have to, and you need to try your best to hold that freeze until the end of time. So definitely keep that in mind. And this one tip is definitely going to make you more consistently hold that lead in your games or take advantage of enemies who are not as diligent as you. Now moving on to the third tip that we got for you right here. This is leaving the enemy outer tower alive early on. And I know, right off the bat, this sounds pretty dumb, but let me explain what I mean here because I think it will better help you understand what the big picture is. You see, taking a tower is really nice and all, but try and think for just a little bit what happens if you leave a tower alive. Well, for one, any minions that come up will die to the tower naturally, and CSing under tower is harder than CSing normally. At the same time, if you have the choice to leave a tower alive, chances are you already got some tower plates, which is a lead right there, or you made your enemy recall. Now, that's fantastic. If your enemies are still around though, that means you are making their life harder already as well. And if you let the tower slowly bleed out over time while still taking plates or lowering its health, you are denying the enemy resource while getting even more for yourself. Now, sure, you definitely still want to take that tower eventually to make sure that the enemy loses more control over the map and to get that sweet tower bounty, of course, but just slow it down a little bit. You don't need to rush so damn much. Sometimes it's fine to just slow it down. What this will essentially do is it will give you even more power, and you'll have more power to do even more and potentially make plays, and you won't greatly upset the state of the other lanes, because you got to remember, every time you do something in your lane early, it can directly affect many other lanes, and while you maybe make one win in one section, another side or another lane might suffer as a result. So you got to make sure that you're really thinking about this, and this really sets yourself up to have more offensive impact, which is going to be great to create that initial lead, of course, and maintain it throughout the course of the game. Now, the next big tip that I got for you, and this one might be the most important in the entire video, so listen up. What you should never, ever do is never give things to your enemy for free. Don't let them take anything at all from you for free. And this might sound really weird or obscure at first, but basically the whole point of this is that anything that your enemy gets or receives, whether it's value on the table, money, kills, whatever, that is because you allowed them to. You gave them the opportunity to, you gave them that effective space to work with, and they got that value on the table. Now, this whole entire idea can be applied to basically everything in the game. Let's say your enemy wants a minion. Auto attack them and make sure not to aggro the wave and make them pay for that minion. Enemies going after the dragon, contest them and make their lives a living hell where they just get farmed, or you potentially turn the tables on them, make them run away with no value on the table at all. Now, if you die as the jungler or your jungler happens to int, back off unless you can threaten to kill the enemy team. Maybe the enemy wants a mid tower, throw out some damage, don't allow them to walk up, punish them for misstepping, and that will just be some free value just like that. Essentially what you're doing here is you're making the enemy team really work for everything. Every single crumb of gold, the tiniest schmeckle, every single experience and power they get, it becomes exponentially harder for them to do so when you are there and ready, just waiting for them to make a mistake. You put in damage and pressure, and you make sure that they realize that you're there, that you make sure that you are in position to punish them, and if they ever step out of line, just a tiny step out of line, you're right there to punish them. This will make them not only play more reserved because they realize you're right there, but you're gonna set yourself up in position to where if enemies don't respect you, you're gonna get just basically free kills, free value. You're gonna be able to snowball your advantage or grab an advantage when the enemies are slightly ahead, which is of course the #1 way to win more games in League of Legends. So that is exactly what you should be trying to do. Now, this is gonna give you much more room to work with as a side product, even doing basic things to get resources or big things like controlling dragons as you work towards the soul point. If you are effectively pushing your enemy in lane anytime they try to get CS, you will naturally generate yourself a lead by putting that additional pressure on you and removing pressure from yourself and your teammates. Now, it's kind of OP to be honest, and it's a 2-for-1 combo that you can do in almost any situation that maximizes your gain and minimizes what the enemy can gain as well, which is just the best of both worlds, right? You're increasing your productivity while at the same time decreasing what the enemy can accomplish. Now, the fifth and final thing in this video to make sure that you're winning more games, gaining that lead, and holding that lead until the very end, it's knowing your limits to take advantage of the enemies. Is knowing your limits to take advantage of enemies, especially the enemies who don't do these things against you. Now, this does demand some type of explanation, but The reality is, at the end of the day, if you put everything together and reverse it against you, you are probably thinking that you'd have a bad time. And that is most definitely true. If enemies are putting all of these things together, the factors on the board or all these tips, they could definitely use it against you. And you're probably thinking that you're gonna just have an awful time and get shut down. Now, one of the biggest difference makers, though, is knowing the capabilities of your champion and preventing as much of this as possible from being done to you, while at the same time, combining everything we have gone over to give you that incremental advantage that enemies are really not prepared for. In reality, down the line, this will make you much more efficient at trading, up your overall goal, diminish the amount of gold your opponents get, maximize your pressure and control on objectives, and just so much more. Now, at the very bare minimum, knowing about these things can make you manage your resources and reduce the impact of the enemies while allowing you to be as strong as possible in the process. Sounds kind of too good to be true, right? But in reality, it's all of these tiny tips that just stack on top of each other, add up to become what you are, while at the same time putting things in place that really squeeze the possible plays from the enemy, make them work so hard for every grain of value, while you are being overall more effective and you're really playing in those limits of the character where you're going so far to the point where you're getting more value and stopping the enemy, but you're not taking one step further to the point where an enemy is able to punish you at all. Now, as a final takeaway for you, what you need to understand is that sometimes the best way to win, actually, is to make sure that your enemy can't have much influence in the game, or maybe even no influence at all. Instead of maybe being the best striker in the world, right? Instead, you are just the best goalie on the planet, and maybe your team just got 1 point, a little bit of a lead, and because you were so good at just shutting down the enemy's plays, no matter how much they try, they just get shut down again and again and again, and they feel helpless, they feel frustrated, they're gonna start making mistakes against you because every time they try to do something, every time they try to fish for something, go for a play, no matter what happens, you're there ready to shut them down, make their life a living nightmare. So that is one of the best ways to actually just destroy your opponent's skill, destroy their morality, destroy everything, and just dominate the ranked ladder. So I can't wait for you to try these tips out in your games, and I know it's gonna help you. But what else is gonna help you even more is Challenger level VODs, advanced tips and tricks. Everything you need is at the GameLeap website. So once you learn these tips, you incorporate them in your games. If you want to see in-depth, step-by-step instruction, go head over to the GameLeap website. You're gonna see Challenger level VOD reviews. Do it right now in the links down below. But that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for coming by, and see you next time.